Oh my God, I got a lady on my channel. Let me tell you the backstory, right? And I'm gonna go fast, my listeners and viewers of the Strong Inspirations, because you got Anthony Brogdon right here front and center. Let me take my glasses off. I don't need them to look at you. Oh my God, I do need them to read though, because I've gotten a little older. Man, it just seemed like in one day my eyesight went and I got to put on these glasses. But don't tell nobody, I get them glasses from the dollar store and they work. And when they break, I lose them, I go get another pair. That's a sidebar. Many years ago, I was in New Orleans. I flew into Baton Rouge and I had a little time on my hand and was going to New Orleans. I saw a sign off the side of the freeway said Black History Museum exit here. I exited. The lady that is on my channel was there. It's her museum. Oh, is that coming full circle for you, my friends? I've been talking this Black history a long time, and that had to be 20 years ago, something crazy like that. But I thank you for watching us again. And I know you're watching this because I can feel it. People are calling me and saying stuff about what they like and maybe don't even like a little bit about the channel. And so I appreciate that. And so I do ask you, my brothers and sisters in Strong Inspiration family people, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video for sure. Hit the notifications bell, because as you can probably tell, I'm uploading 4-5 videos a week, and I don't know when I'm gonna do it. It just, when I finish it, edit it, I'm putting it up. I'm not waiting no specific day, because I want you to get it as soon as possible. So that bell thing, when you hit that, then you get a ding on your computer so you know there's a new video. And then please, my brothers and sisters, don't keep this to yourself. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations, where we give it to you straight, no chaser. Oh my God, that's what we do. And as you might know, I got a movie out. It's titled Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. We talking about slaves who went to college. Unbelievable. See, what happened is when we got a way of learning how to read and write, we get so good, we go to college. And I name names in my film. All right. 70, that's not all I cover either. It's 75 minutes of powerful information. It's got interviews with people whose families started the business in the early 1900s. That's the DVD right there. But if you don't have no DVD player, it's streaming on Amazon and you can get it there. And then I wrote this book. It's titled Black Business Book, which got over 200 facts. And if you're not no big reader, and I'll be honest, I profess I'm not a big reader. I wrote it for people like us, because all I do is give you the fact. I don't even give you no commentary, because I'm not trying to tell you what I think about it. I let the fact stand for itself in my book. It's real easy to read. I had one lady, she sent me a message. She said she carried with her in her purse all the time, because she liked it that much, I guess. You know how women got stuff in their purse anyway. And she said when somebody say something they don't know what they're talking about, she pull out the book. And that's what I wrote it for, that kind of purpose. All right. It's called Black Business Book. And it's on Amazon also. You know, everybody got their stuff on the Amazon. That's why the man, big as he is now. But if you want to, you can just go directly to my website, inspirationsbystrong.com. Inspirationsbystrong.com. We cut the big man out. And if you get the book, I'll autograph it, because I got a feeling one day that's going to mean something super significant, because I'm doing this thing for the rest of my life. I'm finding these people and I'm sharing this information with you. And so with that, I got a sister there. She's smiling. She say, man, quit talking so much, man. Come on, man. What you waiting on?
I have things to do.
I'm handling my business. Come on, brother. And so what I'm gonna say is I ain't gonna make her wait no longer, because she looked like she can really handle her business. Oh my God, I know it. And when I met her, she told me she could. That's the thing. I remember that. When she told me, she said, there's a big tree out there in the back. We're gonna talk about the tree. that is significant. I didn't know, but I remember that tree. And so, come on, I'm sorry for taking too long for you. I apologize. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's go.
Well, my name is Kathy Hambrick, and I'm the founder of the River Road African American Museum, which celebrated its 27th year anniversary on March 12th of this year. It's a nonprofit, community-based museum that started at being located at a plantation here in South Louisiana, about 15 minutes from I-10 between Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
Yep, that's why you decided to open up a museum. How did that come about?
Well, I'm not only the founder of the museum, but I have a master's degree in museum studies. So museum studies, so I'm a museologist. I'm a public historian. I'm a cultural activist. And I also consider myself to be a bit of a futurist and preservationist all at the same time. And one of the things that I know about why New Orleans is so unique is because we've retained so much of our African heritage. And that is evident in the food and the music and the history in general. Three quarters of the African people who were brought to Louisiana during the colonial period, 1708 to about 1808, came from the Senegambia region of West Africa. And along with them on those ships that came into the port of New Orleans through the Caribbean were plants that, plants like okra, for instance, that give us what we call gumbo. The West African word for okra is kien gumbo. So that's how we get gumbo in Louisiana, is from the okra. Right. So we understand that our culture is very much influenced by the Africans who were brought here.
New Orleans is maybe a little bit different, and maybe Mobile might be on the same wavelength. That you all have such a African connection, maybe more so than other parts of America, with the enslaved that went to other parts. Is there maybe some reasoning by that, why you all are such an African-based and Spanish-based type attitude of the people to be who you are?
Well, I think, you know, as horrible and as terrible as slavery was, during the French period here in Louisiana, we had certain freedoms and practiced our religion, though it became Catholicized. We were still able to practice our music from Africa and play our drums in Congo Square. And it wasn't quite as restrictive here as it was in Mississippi and other parts of the South. So our culture just, it flourished, and it flourished quite a bit through that music, food, and through the religion.
I wondered what that was. So we can probably assume that maybe to some degree, the enslavers who that really dealt with the New Orleans area maybe wasn't as brutal as those in other parts of the country?
I wouldn't say that necessarily, because you're generalizing. Slavery in itself was brutal in the fact that one human being could own another. Yeah. But I would say that in many cases, it was less restrictive.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, people moved around the city of New Orleans as free people of color. And even as enslaved people, they had enterprises. For instance, there was something called intrapreneurship. And that means that even though you were enslaved, you were able to hire yourself out if you had certain trade skills, if you were a carpenter or a plasterer or a blacksmith. You could hire yourself out. You could go to the marketplace and sell pralines or sell different food products and vegetables in the marketplace. And you were allowed, in many cases here in Louisiana, to keep a portion of that money that you might have gained from your intrapreneurship
Okay.
opportunity.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the enslaver allowed them to do that. Was that because maybe the crops that they worked were only seasonable and they had to have other things to do to pass the time, or why do you think that was?
I think that as long as, and this wasn't every case
Yeah,
with
sure.
every enslaver, but it was the case in many instances up along the River Road where I am and in New Orleans. As long as he was making his profit, in some cases, they were just a little bit less restrictive
Yeah.
in allowing you to move around and to enter into some enterprises on your own.
And who would they do business with? Would it be other enslavers or who non-enslavers? Who would be their clientele maybe?
Well, they
The
would do
enslaved
business.
people I'm talking about.
They would do business with people in the area in general. New Orleans was a busy metropolitan city. So there were metropolitan international city. So there were people moving around the marketplaces, buying coffee. There were sidewalk cafes. There was even a woman named Rose who had her own sidewalk cafe. So people moving around the city, even enslaved people doing business with each other. You know, if you wanted to buy a blanket or a quilt, or if you wanted to buy okra or yams, if I had them at my cart or my vegetable stand, then we traded, bartered, and bought and sold these products among the people in general and between ourselves.
I like what you're saying. So I'm just trying to figure this out. Okay, so I got this guy behind me that say he my owner. I gotta pick do the crops from 5 a.m. to 2 o'clock. Then at 2 o'clock, he can say you off the clock and you can kind of do your own thing. How do you think that might?
No. Yeah. Most of these enterprises would take place on Sunday. So because we're in a Catholic, more or less a Catholic environment in South Louisiana, on Sundays you would not necessarily work on many of these plantations. You might be given Sunday off, particularly if it was in the off season of sugarcane. So sugarcane, the most laborious time of sugarcane growth, harvest, and planting is in from August to December. Before the first frost is when they have to harvest and get the sugarcane out of the fields. So during other parts of the year, in the springtime, even during the holidays, on Sundays, you might not have to work as much or work at all on Sunday. So many of these marketplaces took place on Sundays.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, I like it. But then it gets so hot down there. Does that have something to do with any of the activities that the enslaved did or something of that sort? You think the weather had anything to do with anything?
It wasn't hot. I mean, we come from a tropical and subtropical climate in Africa and the Caribbean. So what might be hot to a European wasn't necessarily as hot for us, but Louisiana was a very treacherous territory to be enslaved in. If you were in a northernmost state, if you were in Missouri or Tennessee or even northern Mississippi or Georgia, and you were told that you were being sold to Louisiana, most enslaved people, word got around from state to state that you were going to be in for some hard times. Really? Because we did not have the gentle weather of autumn or even a cold season of winter when the crops were down. Louisiana pretty much you could work 12 months a year. You're
Yeah.
working in a subtropical climate.
Yeah.
You're working in an environment where there was malaria and yellow fever,
Yeah.
mosquitoes, alligators. You know,
Yeah.
the environment here was very, very harsh if you were not used to being here and working a 16-hour day as a field hand working in the fields and then going to work in a sugar mill during that very, very critical season of harvest time.
What could have been the worst crop job that you might have had? Is the sugar cane worse than anything else that they made them do? I know it was kind of light on them if they worked in the hotels and servants. Maybe that might not have been so bad.
Well, I mean, you think
Worse?
about well, one of the areas of this history that I'm an expert in is rural sugarcane slavery in the rural sugarcane region of Louisiana, as opposed to urban slavery, which would have been what people experienced in New Orleans. So if you're in New Orleans, you're working more than likely um, in a mansion. You're working for a wealthy planter who had his mansion or his home in the city. You might be working for other types of businessmen or businesswomen in the city of New Orleans as a carriage driver. You may work in the port of New Orleans, loading and unloading the ships. You might be a laundress or a seamstress doing domestic type work in the households of the planters or businessmen of the city.
Right.
But if you worked on the sugarcane plantation and you were a field hand, that was pretty much some of the harshest work in all of the cash crops that were a part of the plantation economy worldwide, whether you were in the Caribbean or here in Louisiana. 16-hour days, working very, very fast with these machetes in a very, very harsh climate and environment, stirring hot syrup in large kettles where this syrup might have splashed out of these kettles with these huge fires under a big kettle or a pot that is 6 feet wide in diameter. If you've ever made candy or a hot syrupy substance in a pot and had that splash on your hand or your arm, you could imagine doing that with a big paddle in a system that was called the Jamaica train method, for which they crystallized sugar from the plant to the syrup to that crystallized product that we all have become so addicted to today.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Now that's good stuff there. So now, because sugar is so prevalent, I mean that added to the diet or the offering of the foods that they have in New Orleans, in particular the praline. Isn't that all sugar?
Oh yes. I mean, once sugar, I say when cotton was king, sugar was queen. So once Etienne de Boré introduced sugar to Louisiana and the world, once the Europeans got a taste of that sugar, a substance so sweet like no other from any other plant, it became very, very addictive. You could now put sugar in your coffee, and coffee was very, very popular. Another product from Africa that was grown on plantations, but coffee has a tendency to have a very bitter taste.
Yeah.
But now you could sweeten your coffee. You could sweeten your tea. You could have pastries now that wasn't just a biscuit that had no sweetness to it. You had pastries, and you also, sugar was so valuable that it was kept in a safe it was like gold. It was so valuable.
Really?
And it was kept in a locked box in the planter's home. It was so valuable.
Now you named the name. Who was the name? The lady's name that you said that she founded sugar?
No, Etienne.
It's a guy.
Etienne is a French name for Stephen de Boré. And he was European. He was not a man of color, but he is the one who introduced sugar cane to Louisiana through the Jesuits. And they were the first to grow the crop here in Louisiana. And as they realized that the world developed this insatiable taste and addiction to sugar, that's how it became so profitable. Everybody wanted it, and it was a very, very expensive product to produce because it requires so much land to produce so little sugar. So, you know, a teaspoon of sugar was valued at about, if you could think of it, a teaspoon of sugar was like $5 in the 1840s. Okay. That's how valuable it was.
And sugar was also, now sugar is big in Jamaica too.
Yes, so yes, Brazil had the largest sugar industry, sugarcane industry. Then the Caribbean, then Louisiana, Florida, Texas, but Louisiana had by far one of the largest sugar industries up until about the 1960s, 1970s, as beet sugar was introduced to America. Cane sugar became less and less popular as corn syrup became a sweetener. Then cane sugar also became less and less profitable and popular.
Now, you mentioned that there were a huge community of free blacks in New Orleans. Yeah. How was that the case?
Well, you know, one of the things that I found very, very interesting as I would hear about free people of color buying their freedom. And I was very, very perplexed by that. Well, what do you mean a person can buy their freedom who was enslaved? If, from what we learned, most of the time, enslaved people didn't make any money. They didn't have any money.
Right.
But remember what I told you. Right. Louisiana was unique in the sense that we had these enterprises of people who engaged in entrepreneurship. Right. So if you had a skill, you hire yourself out. You might be the only person in your family who has this particular skill. But once you were able to accumulate enough money, then you could, under the Code Noir or the Slave Code of Louisiana, it said that at the age of 30, you could go to your owner, master, right, and ask if you could buy your freedom. So now you can imagine
in New Orleans, of Louisiana.
This is the Code Noir or the Slave Code of Louisiana. At age 30, it said in this law, you could go, you had the right to go and ask your master for your freedom, or if you could purchase your freedom. Imagine, you're waiting all of your life. You, as enslaved people in Louisiana, you know about this law. You're waiting. Your family is by whatever means necessary possible, saving money, gathering money, making money on the side. Someone may have run away. They're now in Maryland. They're getting money back to you. Someone is now north somewhere, sending money back to you. You now go and ask your owner for your freedom, and he says, he tells you, okay, you're worth to me, field hand, $1,000. So now you have $1,000. You and all of your family been saving this money for years and years and years. And so in some cases, ironically, and this is in the diaries and in the records of these planners, they would take that $1,000 and grant that person freedom. Then that person goes to freedom, comes back and buys another person's freedom, buys the freedom of his mother, the freedom of his brother, nephews. There was a man in Donaldsonville named Charles Barre who would buy the freedom of his nephews. So he would purchase them. He was already a free man of color. He was a carpenter. He would buy his nephews and then he would hold them in a state of indentureship. So if you've heard about indentured servants,
Yeah.
so he would hold them for 7 years as indentured servants in Donaldsonville while teaching them carpentry, because he felt that you could not be truly free unless you had a skill to take care of yourself and take care of your family.
Yeah.
Once they learned that trade of carpentry, then he would give them their freedom papers, so to speak.
Whoa.
So this was
That's
a
a
way
double-edged
that,
sword. My man said, I got it already. It ain't taking me 7 years. He said, but come on, let me go.
to take care of ourselves and take care of our families. Are you really, truly free?
I wonder how people looked at him. Did they look at him favorably, or some of them said, hey, I like that you did it, but that's kind of a double-edged sword. I don't want to be a carpenter. I know how to play the spoons or something.
Well, you know, being a carpenter was a very, very reputable trade back then.
Okay.
If you were a carpenter, if you were a bricklayer, if you were a plasterer, even if you were a blacksmith, if you had a skill, you were a step ahead from being a field hand. If you had no trade, then all you're going to be able to do is hard labor. But if you had a trade and a skill, then you can offer your services, open your own business, make more money, start your own company or whatever. And many of them did. And that's how they became free people of color.
Are there schools and educational opportunities that started out so much earlier in New Orleans or something because these people had this sense of consciousness?
Well, you say sense of consciousness, but we also have to realize that many of these free people of color were also descendants of their owners. So that's why we have people of African descent who have French names, surnames, and Spanish surnames here in Louisiana, German surnames. You know, is because you were a descendant or the child of your owner, who then in many cases would allow you, because you were his child, to get an education, whether that meant through the Catholic Church, through the sisters or nuns, or whether it was to send you to Paris, as Norbert Rillieux, who invented the vacuum pan for crystallizing sugar, he was sent to Paris to get an education. Wow. So if you were the son of a planter or the owner, you would be afforded an opportunity to get an education more likely than just a regular field hand.
Yeah, is there, what's the oldest school for Blacks there in New Orleans? Is there a school that stands out like that?
Well, one of the very first schools that was started in New Orleans was called Gilbert Academy. And there's actually a historic marker on St. Charles Avenue. If you ever take an African-American heritage tour in New Orleans, you'll go by that marker. And it was started by a man who, as a matter of fact, Pierre Calise Landry was America's first elected Black mayor. And he was mayor of Donaldsonville, where our museum is now located, the River Road African American Museum. He became mayor, elected mayor in 1868. That's 3 years after emancipation.
Right.
And then he started a school at the church that he was also affiliated with, which was a United Methodist Church. That school was called Hartselle Academy. He started Gilbert Haven School, and Gilbert Haven eventually became Straight University, which became Dillard University.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So, you know, the education of Black people in Louisiana dates back to Louisiana's earliest Catholic nuns. The Ursuline nuns educated some of the slave girls there in Louisiana in the early 1700s.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we have Dillard University, we have, of course, Xavier University, we have Southern University, we had the University of New Orleans, which actually had, New Orleans University, which became Dillard University, which actually had a medical school. So
Yeah.
I know you had someone talking about Black doctors last week.
Yeah.
Well, New Orleans had the equivalent of Meharry, called New Orleans University, up until I believe it was about 1930, but that school
Really?
started in the late 1800s.
Really? Oh man, I'm liking New Orleans. Oh, that's some good stuff. Now, in terms, do you speak French?
No, I do not speak French, and I will tell you why, which is not an excuse. My mother said that her mother spoke French fluently, but my grandfather would not let her teach it to the children because he could not understand it.
So now, as we kind of come to a close, the museum is thriving. What's the website for the museum? That kind of thing. What kind of exhibits do you have there, man?
Yes, well, we have an exhibit on Black inventors. So you heard me mention Norbert Rillieux. We have an exhibit on Madam C.J. Walker, who was a native of Louisiana. She was born in Delta, Louisiana. We have an exhibit on Leonard Julian, who invented the sugarcane planting machine in 1964. We have an exhibit on Reconstruction Louisiana. We have an exhibit on African influences on Louisiana cuisine. And we have a virtual tour that you can access through our website on the rural roots of jazz and the rural Black doctors. So the website is www.africanamericanmuseum.org. Okay. africanamericanmuseum.org.
Yes. Hey, you really took me some place. I like that Black entrepreneurship. I mean, that's what I write about. And I've been.
It's intrapreneurship.
Is that still spelled E-N or is it?
No, I-N-T-R-A.
Why is that there a distinction there? Do you know?
Intra meaning selling among yourselves.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship, creating a business and selling amongst or between yourselves, as opposed to entrepreneurship, meaning enterprises that are far-reaching beyond.
I got you.
Yes.
Oh, I really like it. Hey, everybody, did she teach us something tonight? I say tonight because it's dark my time, but she did. I'm telling you, she put it on me. I love it.
In this era of Black Lives Matter, I must give a shout out to all of the founders and my colleagues in the museum profession, where there are Black history museums around the country. I am the former president of the National Association of African American Museums. There are about 125 African American museums nationwide. The first African American museum in the country was the DuSable in Chicago, founded by Dr. Margaret Burroughs and Charles Wright. in 1961 or 1962. I want to say to the young people out there, those of us who started these museums 50, 60 years ago, we've always known that Black lives matter. That didn't just start to happen for us in the last 5 to 10 years. We need your support. All of the African American museums, if there's one in your town or your city, if you don't know if there's one in a nearby town or city, as we start to get out of coronavirus and start to travel a little bit more, make sure you visit an African American museum somewhere. We know that there's a big national museum now at the Smithsonian in DC, but why go all the way to Washington if there's a museum in Mississippi? 2, 3, 4, 5 museums in Mississippi. There's museums in Alabama, almost every state, Seattle, Washington, California. We need for you to support African American museums if you believe that Black lives matter. You may not learn about Black history in school, but you can certainly learn about Black history in our museums, and we need to see you, and we also need you to contribute.
Yes, there you go. I knew I asked that question for a reason, and you put it on us. Oh, thank you so very much for being on the channel, for sharing your knowledge, because you know what you're talking about. You live it, you got degrees in it, you founded a museum. And so everybody, hit the like button on this video. Subscribe, tell somebody about Strong Inspiration. Let's go down to her museum. I'm coming back down there again because I enjoyed my tour when I was there before tremendously. Everybody, she know what she's talking about for sure. Her brother, who I've had on the show also, he down. He know what he's talking about. So between the two of them, you got you covered. I thank you again. And to you, my sister, let me say this with all sincerity, that I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind, because we really appreciate you preserving this history, not just Black history, but American history is in the broader sense. We love you for it. Bye-bye, we out.